Volume 3 issues directly explore the subconscious. In these episodes, I provide you with techniques to uncover your own deeper mind content, then illustrate what to look for and show you how to change. But these episodes require focus and undivided concentration. Properly applied, they deliver you deep personal insights into life and your own consciousness, beyond anything you've experienced or can find elsewhere. I suggest you only delve into Volume 3 pieces when you have the time and a quiet setting where you can focus and concentrate. Part 11 of Volume 3 looks at greater structures within the subconscious, how things parents said to you set into place very negative impacts. The Essence of Reality explores how the psyche, which you are, creates the reality you encounter. Seasons, greetings, whatever season it might be, you found the Essence of Reality, presenting a unique view of human consciousness, of your mind, and the nature of your being. We explore life's real function here, well beyond the dim scope of religion and science. Those old views distort your perception of life's real flow. Insights here clarify it. You create your life's real qualities, health, success, relationships. No other source does but you. To see clearly how that works, stay tuned and come back again. We sure have many a topic to cover. As all Volume 3 pieces, this clip looks at consciousness directly. We've examined the subconscious in some depth, explored techniques for delving inward to better understand your own deeper psyche, and seen how to change it and thereby change your real life as a consequence. This 11th part of Volume 3 set will examine greater, more complex structures of the subconscious. Where Issue 7 revealed basic building blocks of psychic structures, corresponding inner components to outer issues, this one points out larger, more complex structures within the psyche. Here we'll take a look, a deep one, at things your parents told you, likely repeatedly, that lead to detrimental facets of your real life. These are mostly by way of the core mechanisms of mind in the category of suggestion. Strong, typical comments your mother or other caregiver very likely told you that didn't mean to you what it meant to her. And we'll see how important it is for you to get rid of them. They are all bad news for you as your life unfolds. Tom Nair here, as always, exploring consciousness. Perspectives here add to my website, my books, and many talks I've given to open-minded listeners. Indeed, this issue draws from my second book, The Psyche Exposed, which illustrates many key structures of the subconscious. For a more complete look at this sort of negative programming by parents, do find a copy of Psyche. I've covered much, very much there that I could hardly squeeze into a video format. This venture deeper into the psyche requires the background issued previously for maximum value. For one, earlier issues provided tools to explore the subconscious and techniques to change it. Without that background, you'll not be prepared to relieve your subconscious of the detrimental effects I'll be illustrating. You would find these perspectives interesting and informative, but just noting things won't have nearly the impact as if you make use of them personally in your own inner purge. As you grew from infancy, you absorbed many common notions that permeated your culture. These are shared ideas that people generally accept, whether they're valid or not. That includes the typical Western culture, elements of Christianity and science, plus thoughts of luck, fortune, and so forth as influences on how life unfolds. No one gets to adulthood without such early influence. Yet, many ideas inflicted on children simply aren't valid. Of course, whatever the culture, whatever the shared societal notions, things generally work to some degree, with wide-ranging degrees of prosperity and joy. But However well off and prosperous or troubled your society is, you may or may not share in the better advantages available to you within the context of your area. The principal driving force for how well you personally are doing, though, is not the complex of factors laid out by common thinking, your training, your luck, your education, local conditions, your inner drive, the economy. Indeed, the only real influence on your life's unfolding success, health, and happiness is your own base nature. That's the point communicated here. The connection you have with the world you encounter, the causal influence you have on unfolding events and relationships of your life. You attract them, and you can change them. Points in Volume 3 up to here provided techniques to delve inward to find inner roots to problem areas of life and change them, thus improving all aspects of life. Issue 10 reviewed how damaging prayer can be, due principally to its projection of power out to an imaginary source. Next in line of gestures handed to you, without doubt, as the naive child you were, are repeated phrases, doubtless passed along many generations, which parents used, probably without much thought, which strongly programmed your subconscious with negative suggestion. I call this issue shedding the shoulds, as much of this programming was inflicted with the highly suggestible recommendation or even command by parents of what you should be or what you should do. The damage comes through the timelessness and absorbency of the subconscious, particularly prone to suggestion from trusted, nurturing sources. One common voicing I had to deal with, you too I suspect, was the old phrase, "You should be ashamed of yourself." This could be in response to something said or done that wasn't proper according to parental standards and rules. What it meant to the parent was, that isn't the right or acceptable thing to do. Basically, like another phrase, you should know better than that, or at best, you shouldn't do that. What you should be ashamed of yourself meant, though, to the timeless subconscious of the naive child was this. You should exist in a state of shame or guilt because somehow your natural tendencies are wrong. Your natural impulses are not suitable to how we do things around here. In other words, there's something inherently wrong with you. That's a very bad message to the open, naive subconscious of a growing child. A very negative slam to the self-image. And it was enhanced, and the situation further confused by this repeated query, "What's wrong with you?" Or, for variety, I guess, "What's the matter with you?" The implication there again is that there's a right way to be, and you aren't it. But the added confusion to those last two queries is even worse. Instead of positive reinforcement that you have wonderful inherent qualities that you can properly feel good about, it was an unanswerable question about flaws. Hearing that as a kid, I had no idea what was wrong with me. I felt okay. I was just doing what came natural, being myself. And here, hovering over me, was this great authority, supplier of love, care, and sustenance, strongly implying I was flawed, and that I should somehow know intrinsically what that flaw was. What's the matter with you? Wow. I really wonder how my mother could say that to me, other than she was just repeating what she'd heard growing up. Earlier generations, I'm sure, and many cultures even today, view a child as a thing, a possession, an underling to be bossed around and made to conform to dictated standards. So when I actually did what I wanted to do, like cross the street, I've always been very adventurous and curious, it would elicit such queries and outrage, even punishment to keep me in line. I'm sure that my mother was fearful that something might happen to me, as another saying. But it was the fear that was communicated to me quite well, enhanced by her traditional Christian notions that posited punishment from God if I stepped out of line. I was probably more worried about punishment from Dad if their sacred rules had been broken, even though I didn't actually know what all the rules were or where in the world they had come from. Back to the shame notion. In one's natural state, shamefulness isn't an ordinary feature. One just is, replete with a wide array of qualities and natural urges. But my mother was highly religious, so she had a very prudish, straight-laced moral code. Sex was never mentioned outside of her condemning me for fiddling with my unnamed private parts. I should have been, in her world of prim and starchy behavior, ashamed of myself. In reality, treating people with any sense of fairness, behaving as a normal human, shame is a worthless feature to harbor. But the strong suggestion repeatedly that a child should be ashamed not only tells the subconscious its natural impulses are wrong, but it is supposed to exist in a state of shame for just following the impulse, not the overlaid behavior imposed and enforced by parental authority. Because the subconscious is timeless, once that state is suggested, reinforced, and established, in the state of shame persists within one's self-image. These shoulds are really important ones to shed. How about this? You should stand up straight, I was told, or commanded, sit up straight. Always tall for my age, it was easy to slouch, but the real issue was being told to stand with straight posture was an authoritative command. It was much more likely to elicit poor posture as an underling bossed about than had I simply been treated with courtesy and respect for my own being, instead of being ordered about, needing permission to do anything, and being punished for just following my own nature. Eat your vegetables. Clean your plate. You shouldn't waste food. Another negative should. The world, the entire universe, is wasteful. It's extremely inefficient. Worrying about such petty waste was a damage in itself. The message here was that reality is so tough, so meager in its resources, that one had to be ultra efficient just to survive. And that whole attitude, hammered in about dreading wasting any particle of food and eternal need to be efficient, that attitude itself contributes a lack in life, a failure to just simply succeed. And it stems from the internal programming that life is tough, that the world is lacking in resources. There were implied shoulds too. Behave yourself. Commands a behavioral pattern that I should have displayed rather than my natural response. Don't do that. Elicited 1,000 times as I reached a different conclusion as to what I ought to be doing than parental rules allowed. Another implied should. All of these, and the punishment that might await if the shoulds are ignored, led to compromise of the self. A lack of trust for one's own natural impulses. They force you to rely on learned acceptable behavior and commonly shared ideas and traits, and pull away from your own natural character, your untainted self. Well, shall I review all of the things I wasn't supposed to do, things admonished as, you shouldn't do that? Guess not. You get the point. Parental authority, as young adults tried to impose some sense of order on their household, very often imposed long-lasting self-restrictions instead of the simple directives they intended. The effect on the naive, open, trusting mind of the child, which each of us was for an inescapable few formative years, was very often much deeper and far more negative than intended. In your own journey, you would do well to use the techniques presented earlier to shed your own shoulds. We've examined the subconscious in some depth. We've explored techniques for delving inward to better understand your own deeper psyche. And we've seen how to change it, and thereby change your real life as a consequence. Shedding the shoulds will examine greater, more complex structures of the subconscious. As you grew from infancy, you absorbed many common notions that permeated your culture. These are shared ideas that people generally accept, whether they're valid or not. No one gets to adulthood without such early influence. Yet, many ideas inflicted on children simply aren't valid. Indeed, the only real influence on your life's unfolding success, health, and happiness is your own base nature. Next in line are repeated phrases which parents used, which strongly program your subconscious with negative suggestion. The damage comes through the timelessness and absorbency of the subconscious. You should be ashamed of yourself. You should know better than that. You shouldn't do that. What's wrong with you? What's the matter with you? Sit up straight. Eat your vegetables. Clean up your plate. You shouldn't waste food. Behave yourself. Don't do that. Parental authority very often imposed long-lasting self-restrictions instead of the simple directives they intended. In your own journey, you would do well to use the techniques presented earlier to shed your own shoulds